Hello YouTube, welcome to another video. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last however many years, you've probably realised there's a bit of a climate emergency going on. Now, I've already done quite a bit in terms of my solar panels and stuff to reduce my carbon footprint, but I'd like to do more. So I've set myself a goal of trying to completely remove my usage of fossil fuels directly. So obviously foods you buy and things like that have got a certain carbon footprint in them already. I'll tackle that at a later date, but what I can control quite easily and do something about now is my direct usage of fossil fuels. And by that I mean in my vehicles, in my central heating, and that sort of thing. So I've set myself the goal by the end of summer next year to try and completely get rid of any direct use of fossil fuels from my life. So in order to do this, I have to first get rid of my motorcycle, which is a petrol powered motorcycle, and potentially replace that with an electric one. And I also need to get the gas cut off to my house. And in order to get the gas cut off, I'm going to have to replace my cooker, which has a gas hob, and I'm going to have to replace my central heating system, which is currently a gas-fired boiler. So in this episode, I want to have a look at what I'm going to do about these and how I'm going to do it. And if that's something that you'd be interested in, if this is a journey that you're also going to be considering doing for yourselves, then please subscribe and follow along. I try and record everything that I do with getting myself to this goal of having the gas cut off to the house before next winter. So yeah, let's get into some of the details of exactly what it is I'm going to have to do. So this is my motorcycle. It's a Triumph Speed Triple, and it's my pride and joy. And although I don't actually ride it that much, I only use it in the summer and on sunny days, it still burns petrol. And so it's not really compatible with me trying to reduce my use of fossil fuels. So it's going to have to go. And hopefully I'll be able to find something equivalent to replace it with that runs on electric. So Triumph are working on an electric motorcycle. This is their Project TE1, which is their attempt to create their first electric motorcycle. Now you can see from these artist impressions that it looks very similar to the Speed Triple. So this is a bike I would quite happily replace my Speed Triple with. Unfortunately, it's just a concept at the moment. They're working on a battery and a powertrain for it, but that's as far as it's gone so far. They're not actually building this motorcycle yet. When it will be commercially available, who knows? How much it will cost? Probably too much. But the way it looks, I quite happily replace my Speed Triple with this. But I'm going to have to wait a few years before this comes out, I think. So it might be a question of sell my current bike, put the money to one side, and wait for a few years until this one comes out, or something akin to this comes out. So something I might consider having in the meantime is one of these Super Soco bikes. They're not very powerful, but they are electric and they are not too expensive. And at least it would be able to allow me to scratch that itch to ride a bike in the summer for the few years that it would take for a decent Triumph to come out. So this is an option, and maybe something that I will consider. This is our double oven hob that was here when we bought the house. So both ovens and the grill, etc., are all electric, but there's a lot of gas burners on the top. So this will also need to be replaced before we can have the gas disconnected. So there are dual width or full width range cookers with electric hobs available. These are a lot more than I want to spend, I have to say, but there are some cheaper options available. But the fact is, there is a replacement available for us. Replacing the gas hob that we've got at the moment shouldn't be too difficult. It should be just a question of swapping it out. However, the cable that currently runs to the existing cooker may not be thick enough to power both a double oven as well as 5 rings. As the one that's there at the moment may only be thick enough to power the double oven that the existing range cooker does. The top obviously being gas. So it could be that putting a new electric range cooker in that place means that we would have to have a thicker electricity cable run to the kitchen from the distribution board. And that obviously would also have its own cost associated with it. But it is feasible. So this is our existing boiler. It's a glow worm. We had it fitted probably about 6-7 years ago, and it still works fine. But yeah, we want to get rid of this as it's gas. So what are the options? So one of the options for replacing my gas boiler is to replace it with a like-for-like electric boiler. Now I found this website which shows that you can get electric boilers. This one goes from 6 to 14.4 kilowatts, and it looks like it just straight swap out. So this would obviously be probably the easiest solution in terms of the minimum amount of effort. However, I suspect it's probably not the most efficient solution. Also, you can see here that my existing boiler's label says that it's a 24 kilowatt boiler. So this only goes up to 14.4 on a single phase, but you can go all the way from 12 to 39 kilowatts on a 3-phase boiler. So if I was to go for a 23 kilowatt, which would be a close match to my current one, then I would have to definitely get my electricity supply upgraded to 3 phases, which would obviously entail quite a bit of additional cost. So another option would be to remove the gas boiler and remove all of the old radiators and replace each of them like for like with an equivalent smart electric radiator. One of the benefits of having these new smart electric radiators is that they each have their own thermostat and smart controls. So it means that if there are some rooms that you're not using, for example, you could just switch the radiators off in those rooms. But also you can set different temperatures for different rooms. For example, in the bedroom, you might want the temperature to be a bit cooler for sleeping. But in the living room and the dining room, you might want it much warmer. So these radiators give you the ability to do that. And also I think they've come on a long way, and the smart technology that they now contain means that they're probably reasonably efficient. Probably still nowhere near as efficient as a heat pump, for example, but they do give you that individual flexibility, and they are reasonably inexpensive. And you can see there are a lot of different styles available. They all look really nice, and would be a welcome addition to the wall of most homes, I think. And you have different sizes and shapes depending on what size place you've got available to put them, whether you want to have them in a bathroom or in a hallway. But yeah, they're all very, very nice looking. So another option that I've heard about is these infrared panels. Now these are really thin sort of radiators, electric radiators that you can mount on the ceiling, as you can see in these images here, which means that they don't take up much in the way of wall space. They're supposed to be pretty efficient, and they emit infrared, so they actually heat the items in the room rather than just heating the air. So supposedly, even when they've switched off, the room stays warmer for longer. Now, I don't have a huge amount of experience with these, so it's really hard for me to gauge whether or not these would be a good option. However, I know that my wife is not so keen about having these sort of white panels hanging from the ceiling, so this may or may not be a viable option for us. So I suppose the most obvious heating replacement to go for, the one that's in all the news at the moment, is an air source heat pump. Now, from what I understand of air source heat pumps, they do not get the water up to a very high temperature. I think it's around sort of 40-45 degrees, something like that. Now, in a well-insulated house with underfloor heating, you know, that's probably more than adequate. Our house has got a suspended floor that's vented to the outside, so the floor gets particularly cold in the winter. To insulate underneath all the floor of the house would be prohibitively expensive, and would require ripping out, you know, like the entire downstairs to do it. It's just not really going to be an option. So I think that probably an air source heat pump will not be sufficient to keep the house warm. Now I could be wrong about that, but that's just my gut feeling at the moment. Also, from what I understand, having one fitted probably costs in the range of around £10,000. Now I know you can get some of that back from the government in the form of rebates over a period of years, so that's not going to be like the full cost, but certainly up front that's what you've got to come up with. I also know some people who have air source heat pumps fitted in their homes at the moment, and they have had issues with noise, not so much for themselves, but complaints from their neighbours who the heat pump just happens to be close to the boundary and pointing directly at their neighbour's house, and the neighbours are not particularly happy about the sound. Now, I think where we would have to have an air source heat pump fitted either side of the house is going to be pointing at our neighbours' houses, and I don't really want to go down that route of potentially causing an annoyance for my neighbours by having this constant droning going on, even if it's quiet. So there's that to consider as well. But yeah, I think really for me, my feeling is that an air source heat pump probably is not going to be the solution that will work for us. I think perhaps I would rather spend the money on something that's a bit less efficient, like some intelligent electric radiators, and then spend the difference, which is quite a lot, on a lot more batteries for my system. Batteries that I could then charge up from the grid using cheap night rate electricity, and then use that to run the electric rads during the mornings and evenings when we would most likely have them on. That's based on the assumption, of course, that the cheap night rate electricity will continue into the future, which may be a false assumption. You know, these cheap night rate tariffs came into existence because of the fact that there was an excess of electricity available on the grid at night time and not much demand, and so they lower the price to encourage people to use the electricity when there's nowhere else for it to go. But as more and more people get EVs in this country, more and more people will be charging their cars at night, and so I can see that the nighttime demand will start to match the nighttime supply, in which case I can't see that the cheap rates will continue, at least not by the big margin that we have at the moment compared with the daytime rate. So making the assumption that that will carry on for the foreseeable future and planning my whole heating strategy around that might be a bit of a bad idea. But short of, like I say, gutting my house and getting it fully insulated and then completely reinstalling my kitchen and all my downstairs before having a heat pump fitted, would just be astronomically expensive, and I don't believe I would ever really make any of that back in terms of savings over the difference of having some electric rads that might potentially cost more to run on a day-to-day basis. But if the total cost of installation is, you know, £10,000 less, it's going to take a lot of years before you're going to recover that difference in terms of the difference in price. So yeah, my initial feeling is some form of electric radiators is probably going to be the way to go, be that the infrared panels or the just the intelligent smart electric rads that I showed earlier. Ground source heat pump is just a no-go, and like I say, air source heat pump may be a possibility, and also the electric boiler replacement is another one to consider. Certainly going to be the simplest of all of the options to install. It would just be a question of running a pretty thick cable from the distribution board to where the kitchen cupboard is, and that could be done along the outside of the house, and then putting in place pretty much a straight swap electric boiler for the gas boiler. I think it would be prohibitively expensive to run that, and then obviously you've still got some of the downsides, albeit you're using electric heat, water, so you've got all the associated problems of having water-filled radiators, etc., etc. If you're going to be using that kind of energy to heat the house, having electric rads in each room, I think, would probably be far more efficient and far more controllable, and just do away with the whole issue of having water, you know, in pipes. So my feeling is that we'll probably try and go down some kind of electric rads route, but haven't made a full decision yet, so need to go and look at some figures and try and figure out realistically what's going to work. I probably need to get some proper quotes as well from companies, but yeah, that's my initial thoughts. So I've created a little spreadsheet here with each of the monthly amounts that I spent on gas for the last 12 months, and this obviously includes the daily standing charge, which once we get the gas disconnected we won't have to pay anymore. But yeah, so the total for the year adds up to about £530. So if we take that and work out what that buys us in terms of kilowatt hours for the year using electric, at the day rate cost, it gets us 3,835 kilowatt hours. Or if I can somehow use the cheap night rate at 5p a kilowatt hour that it stands at the moment, then that would get us 10,582 kilowatt hours. Now we only need to use this for the 6 months of winter because we don't require the heating in the summer. So if you work that out on a per month basis, it gives you 639 kilowatt hours per month for the 6 months of winter, and 1,763 kilowatt hours if we can do it using the cheap night rate. And then if you work that out on a per day basis, then it's only about 21 kilowatt hours of day rate equivalent cost for the winter months, or 57.8 kilowatt hours using the cheap rate. Now, I'm not expecting to be able to switch over to electricity and it be as cheap as running gas. I think it is going to almost certainly cost us more. But this gives at least an indication of how much we can use and still it have cost us nothing extra. But I suspect we will have to go beyond this. And then over here, I've just started doing a quick breakdown of the cost of certain items. So for an e-boiler, it's about £1,200 or so for the boiler. That's just literally for the cost of the boiler. It doesn't include fitting or anything like that. For the electric rads, we're looking at around £5,000 to buy enough electric rads for all the rooms in the house. And again, that doesn't include any kind of wiring or fitting or anything like that. And for the IR panels, they're significantly more expensive than their electric rads. So we're looking at over £10,000 for enough infrared panels to go around all the rooms in the house. So that one's going to be quite expensive, and certainly probably more on par with getting an air source heat pump fitted. So the goal is, by the end of the summer next year, we want to have the gas cut off to the house, and we want to be burning no petrol, so that we literally do not use fossil fuels directly anymore. So stay tuned. I'll keep you up to date with the progress of what's going on towards that goal, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.